It's a beautiful day in the gamer world, a beautiful day for a gamer. It's good to be, it's great to be. It's a gamerly day in this beauty world, a gamerly day for a beauty. It's good to be, it's great to be. I've always wanted to game with a gamer like you. I've always wanted to play a game with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say it's good to be, it's great to be, it's good to be a gamer. Yes, it is. Indeed, it is. It's great to be a gamer. Hello, gamers. Have you ever tried to pick out your favorite Nintendo game? I know it's not always very easy. Sometimes people just can't decide. And today I'm in quite a pickle. I can't decide on my favorite Nintendo game. So I decided to ask my friends for help. So let's see what their favorite Nintendo Entertainment System games are.
I'm Michael B. the Game Genie, and I make videos on YouTube. Brazzle the Gamer's asked me to come on today and tell you my favorite game from the Nintendo Entertainment System. What is it? But of course, Brazzle, it's Mega Man 2. Why is it my favorite game on the NES? Well, there's a variety of reasons I could talk about. I could talk about the excellent music, how it has some of the best music in the series, if not all of the NES library. I could talk about the great difficulty challenge that it presents, because, you know, it's not overwhelming like some of the earlier games. Like Mega Man 1 could be really overwhelming, but Mega Man 2 has that nice introductory curve to it, where you can play on normal or difficult. You can choose to do different runs, like I'm just going to use the P-Buster as opposed to using the weapons, because we all know the Metal Blades can be a little overwhelming. Talk about that great level design, the cool function that lets you change from boss to boss. There's lots of reasons, but for me, the real reason is mostly for nostalgia purposes. You see, Mega Man 2 on the NES has always been my favorite NES game, and it's the first game that really caught me. I talk a lot about how Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo is probably the game that really made me a gamer. Well, Mega Man 2 is really the game that got me interested in gaming. Like, I had games, I thought they were cool, but it was always a very casual thing for me. Mega Man 2 is the first one that ever made me want to come back, made me want to beat it, made me want to come back to it and get all the way through, finding out different strategies for the bosses. It's the one that caught me and made me, I guess, more interested in being able to complete games. It's the one that intrigued me the most and probably led to me being here today on YouTube. So, my favorite NES game? It's Mega Man 2. Hope I gave a good reason for why.
Hey everybody, it's your buddy Mr. Maynard here, and well, I'm helping out Brazzle on an idea here, so he wanted to know what my favorite Nintendo game is, and really, it's Cobra Triangle. Now, why Cobra Triangle? I remember seeing this game in Nintendo Power back in the day. I think it was issue 6. It was a long time ago. Now, the funny thing is I never got around to playing it until just the last couple years ago. When I finally got around to finding a copy of this game, especially right here, I paid only probably about $3 for it. So, this was created by Rare for popular games that they've made, like Battletoads and, Snake Rattle and Roll, Wizards and Warriors. So, if you think about it that way, the difficulty is pretty much up there. However, how the game plays is you race around in a little red boat, and you're collecting points, or protecting people, or racing, or defeating a monster. The game is very, very challenging. So, still to this day, I highly recommend anybody picking up a copy of this, because you'll get a lot of bang for your buck, because you're not going to spend no more than probably $5 or $10 tops. So, but other than that, yeah, it's a pretty good game, and since then, I still have not beaten this. So, anyways, I'll catch you guys later. Till then, adios.
Like many people, I'm sure, it's hard to try and pinpoint what your favorite game on the NES might be. All those years of playing Nintendo games, how do you pick just one? And of all the options, which stands out as the best? It's hard to decipher through the nostalgia, so I go to the game that I seem to return to time and again, and that game is Tetris. The first version I ever played was the unlicensed Tengen version, which I remember playing in a smoky, hole-in-the-wall arcade on a cocktail cabinet at the age of 7. That same year, I played the console release in my friend's living room, and while I didn't really understand how to play it, it certainly stands out over the years. The improved version, in my opinion, was released a year or so later by Nintendo, which I played at my cousin's house and was even more enthralled by the action. There's nothing incredibly exciting about dropping Tetrazoids in a confined space, and outside of trying to beat a high score, there's no real challenge of enemy bosses or harder difficulties to come back and conquer. But what I love the most about Tetris is its simplicity. It's a puzzle game, and one that anyone can play. The music, while also simplistic in nature, is so recognizable and unique that you'd be hard-pressed to hear a tune from the soundtrack and not know which game it came from. The NES version of Tetris also features some great, vibrant colors that blend well with the black backgrounds and otherwise dark textures. The colors just seem to stand out that much more. Was Tetris my favorite Nintendo game growing up? No, that'd be saved for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Tecmo World Wrestling, or even Cobra Triangle. But if I think about an NES game that I return to time and again, it's an easy choice.
If someone is reading this, I must have failed. This star, called Naju, was once our home, but it was invaded by evil life forms. Everyone except myself was killed. I'm going to attempt to activate a self-destruct device. If I fail, you will need to perform this task, so that it will never happen to another race of beings again.
My name is Zach Smith. You may also know me as the SHMUP Master. My favorite and most cherished NES game of all time is without a doubt The Guardian Legend by Compile. I received it as a gift on my 10th birthday back in 1989 by my Uncle Doug, and I've never stopped loving it almost 3 decades later. Now, there's some obvious nostalgia going on in my head here, but I will have to say, The Guardian Legend is still a pretty damn good game. It's exceptionally crafted, beautifully cryptic, masterfully intense, and wonderfully atmospheric in the best possible ways. It's also a hybrid, one of the first of its kind, an RPG, adventure game, and a shmup, all rolled into one. The Guardian Legend is also significant for its use of a female protagonist. After all, this was in a time when you could count on one hand the number of games featuring a powerful, prominent female character. A legendary game indeed. If for some crazy reason you haven't played this masterpiece, I implore you to do so. It's as fun to play today as it was back in 1989. You will be challenged, you will be thrilled, and you might even be amazed at just how great of a game it still is all these years later. But most of all, you'll have fun. And in the end, that's all that really matters, right?
I've narrowed my selections down to just a few NES games. Galaga, Super Mario Bros. 3, Mega Man 5, Gradius, Double Dragon, Ninja Gaiden, Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, and Mega Man 2. I guess I'll just go ahead and play a little of each of these so I can try to make a decision. And while I do that, let's take a look at some more of my friends and see what they had to say.
SNES Drunk. Hi there, Brazzle the Gamer was nice enough to invite me to this collaboration, so this is me, SNES Drunk, talking about my favorite NES game, Mega Man 3. It started when I was in 3rd grade. I didn't own an NES, and the SNES didn't exist yet, but I was still really into video games and would go over to friends' houses to play all the time. The reason Mega Man 3 stood out to me was because of an issue of Nintendo Power my friend showed me. It was the March 1991 Volume 22 issue with Metal Storm on the cover. In the classified information section, there was a chart detailing how many hits each Robot Master weapon would take to defeat each boss, some being more, some being less, and some not being effective at all. This blew my mind as a kid because to me, up to that point, video games were just run to the right, shoot stuff, get to the end of the level, and really straightforward. But this chart proved to me that there was real strategy and forethought here. There was a pattern you were supposed to follow. So I bothered a friend of mine to rent the game again so we could implement the stats from the chart, and sure enough, the Gemini Beam beat Needleman in only 4 hits, the Magnet Missile beat Hardman in only 7 hits, and even the lame-ass Topspin weapon beat Shadowman in just 4 hits. This was a huge revelation to me that video games, well, some video games, could be so much more than what you saw on the surface, and for me, it all started with Mega Man 3.
My favorite NES game? Little Nemo, the Dream Master. I can't think of another game that better captures the pure imagination of a child. Now, of course, we all know that it was based on the surrealist comics of Winsor McCay, but as a kid I didn't know that. I knew that it was whimsical and colorful. I knew that it was strange and exciting. This game, perhaps more than any other, showed me that the scope of imagination is limitless, and that the power of dreams is immeasurable. In Little Nemo, you play as Nemo, who's been invited to Slumberland to play with the princess, and you discover the King of Slumberland has been kidnapped by the King of Nightmares, so you travel through your dreams and explore the world of Slumberland to rescue the king. This is a world I remember just being in awe of as a kid, and I kind of still am. The world of dreams, inhabited by the unusual and where anything is possible. Right from the start, exploring the overgrown mushroom forest, you already feel the scope of this game, and you know that you're in for a grand adventure. Defending yourself with candy thrown at snails or tree stumps, collecting keys, finding your first animal companion, and tagging along for a ride or, climbing inside of them for a bit. Yeah, Little Nemo is super weird, but it's kind of its thing, and it's kind of amazing. From the mushroom forest into the flower garden, taking the train through Toyland, diving into the night sea, even exploring Nemo's own house. The entire journey preparing you and Nemo alike to bring light into Nightmare Land. This game is an adventure of the highest order, with a childlike innocence that can't be forgotten. Just as we all hope to never grow up, Little Nemo's a game that never seems to get old. And that is why it's my favorite NES game.
Perhaps one of Nintendo's best long-lost retro franchises, Star Tropics is often described as a Zelda clone, but in essence it is much, much more. Created by a Japanese team but marketed towards North American audiences, Star Tropics tells the tale of Mike Jones, a 15-year-old visiting his Uncle Steve on the tropical sea island. Upon arrival though, the island chief tells Mike his uncle has been abducted, gives him a shoddy little yo-yo, and sends him on a quest through dark caverns, haunted villages, and ancient ruins in an attempt to find him. I got this cart from my grandparents when I was just a kid, and my mother actually managed to finish it before I ever did. A surprising feat considering how much she generally disliked video games. From the first time I played Star Tropics, I was addicted to it. The upbeat, catchy music and bright visuals give Star Tropics an incredible charm throughout, making it very hard to put down, even in the trickiest of dungeons. A lot of people find the game difficult, and it certainly can be. With a bit of exploration and a keen eye, you can uncover tons of secrets with useful items and weaponry to help you blast through the toughest of rooms and bosses. This was always one of my favorite aspects of Star Tropics. Even though it's much more linear than The Legend of Zelda, there are still so many areas to find and discover, so look around and don't give up. Star Tropics is split into 8 chapters, with multiple save points within each. This makes it very easy to pick up and play for a while in order to make a little bit of progress without the need for extremely long gaming sessions. The game gets more difficult with every chapter, with one exception, but the difficulty curve overall is actually extremely fair, making Star Tropics an approachable retro experience that anybody can play at their own pace. Do not be fooled by those saying it's a Zelda clone. Though it does have some similar elements to Nintendo's flagship series, Star Tropics is its own unique and quirky beast, and as far as I'm concerned, one of the best action-adventure titles on the NES. Although it was followed up by a very good sequel released on the NES in 1994, the series unfortunately has never progressed any further. Every year, though, I keep hoping for a new entry.
Hey everybody, NeoSolid22 here. So the NES game I'm going to talk about is one that I had when I was fairly young. I got it. It's probably one of the first games I got for my NES, and I don't feel like it's a game that gets a lot of respect, but I always had a lot of fun with it. I've never beaten it, but I don't think it's really a game that you're really truly intended to beat. It's a game made by Vic Takai, and Vic Takai is one of the, I think, underappreciated NES game designers. And they made a lot of really good games in the 80s and early 90s for the NES. And the game I'm going to talk about is Bump and Jump. Bump and Jump's a really awesome game. I'm going to take the card out here, but this is just a custom case. I don't have a box. But Bump and Jump is one of my favorite NES games. Like I said, made by Vic Takai. It's basically just a car game. You drive little tiny cars. You go down a road. You avoid other cars. And occasionally there's jumps. And when you get to a jump, you have to make the jump. You jump by pressing a button. And so when you press the button, it gives you a little lift. And there's ramps, of course. But some jumps, you'll jump over a road, on an island, on another island, then back to the road again. It's been a while since I played this game, so I hope that's right. But Bump Jump is definitely one of my favorite NES games. Doesn't get a lot of respect. Not many people mention it. But that's why I picked it to talk about today. I would highly recommend you check out Bump and Jump if you never had any Vic Takai games altogether, in my opinion. Any of them are great. Go-Go 13 is another very popular one that I think a lot of people have heard of. But Bump and Jump, like I said, not many people have heard of. I think you should definitely check it out, and that's why it's one of my favorite NES games. Thanks.
I'll be honest, when Brazel approached me with the idea, I didn't know what I would be doing. He said I needed to have it done by the end of the week, like he was my boss, then walked down the hallway, rambling something about taxes and global warming. Didn't take too long to narrow it down, though. I grew up with an NES, and for most of my childhood, it was Mega Man 6 and one other game. I couldn't quite pick the one that I liked more than the other at the time until I played them again recently. I decided that Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar, would be the one. Now, this game was an imaginative kid's best friend. I was on an adventure, for fuck's sake. It starts out asking you the questions, then you get thrown into a world that's freaking huge, by the way, and you're forced to figure out everything from goddamn scratch. You gain party members, you deal with, oh, that is a very progressive question to be asking. Let's see here, just curious. Great, now I look like a dick. Of course I do. You level up, get money, and the bitches. And when you level up, new things happen like, what the fuck? A goddamn pirate ship? That shit's just fucking awesome. Let me take that. An entire ocean to explore? Sweet. At least I'm safe from those yellow barbarians on the... fucking seahorses. There's an overworld, towns, forests, moon gates, spells that require ingredients. There's a fucking straight up spell book that I had for this game, bound and all. You had moral decisions? How am I going to afford that? I hear, just have, one coin. What? Shit, dude, I know you're blind, but you couldn't feel that there's just no way that it's one alright, whatever. Fuck it, I'll just do them all. By the way, this is how you don't beat the game. There's an underground world? Holy fuck, it start. Better put on some light. Oh shit, first goddamn person, what the fuck? This is great? I'm scared and excited at the same time? What's in this door? Fucking headless blue monsters and mimics? Jesus, this place was scary as a kid. Especially when you're lost and everyone's dying and you just have to keep moving forward, hoping there's an exit somewhere. It was awesome, and it still is. There's a fucking journey right there, and it's why my pick is Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar. Now after this, go check out that game. Don't just look at it, fucking play it or something.
I think I've narrowed down my choices. Gradius, I really like to play, but it's not my favorite. Mega Man 5, I've got a lot of good memories with this, but there are other games that I like better than this. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a favorite of like a lot of people, but it's not mine. And Galaga, I've got a lot of good memories with this one as well, but just not my favorite. So let's get back to our friends.
I remember vividly the first time I saw Castlevania 3. It was the end of June 1991, and my best friend hosted a sleepover for his 13th birthday. His friend Matt, who later became one of my best friends and still is to this day, brought over his copy of Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. Now, I was very familiar with the Castlevania series. Hell, I owned the first two and was well aware that the third installment had been released. But new games were hard to come by at 13 years old, as I had to purchase them myself on my meager paper route income, so I had yet to see this latest adventure against Dracula and his minions. To say I was blown away is an understatement. It played just like the original Castlevania, only with better graphics and a soundtrack. Konami was already known for having the best music on the NES, and Castlevania 3 was no exception. It rivaled Mega Man 2, and that's saying a lot. We played Dracula's Curse into the wee hours of the morning, and I died a little inside when Matt had to take his game back home. I was hooked and needed a fix. I soon purchased a used copy from my local video game store, and the rest of the summer of '91 was spent hiding in the shadows of my basement, hell-bent on eradicating the evil vampire formerly known as Vlad Tepes. With multiple paths that branch off throughout, Castlevania 3 begs to be replayed. The game was huge for its time, offering a ton of challenging stages, and bosses? Damn straight. The soundtrack complements the environment of the game flawlessly and is still one of my all-time favorites to this day. Dracula's Curse is what cemented the Castlevania franchise as one of my favorites, and I still love to replay this one, as it instantly transports me back to a simpler time in my dungeon of a basement, cursing each and every nefarious beast that I slayed. The feeling of nostalgia that I get for this game is absolutely priceless. So while there are a ton of NES games that I love unquestionably and will play until I'm recycled back into the earth, choosing Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse as my favorite is a no-brainer.
When I think of my favorite NES game, there's quite a few I could come up with, but probably the game that holds the most nostalgia and great times is Super Mario Bros. 3. And I know somebody on this list will probably have the same game, but let's face it, Super Mario Bros. 3 is a classic NES game, and by far one of the best games in the Mario franchise. I have many memories with this game, and even some nightmares, but my memories would be playing the game and going through and trying to beat the game, or even playing two players with my dad. He would sit down and we would play the game, and every time I would try to sneak by, he would try to get me in the battle game so he could try to steal my turn. Sometimes he won, sometimes he didn't. We would laugh about it though, because it was pretty funny. If you haven't played Super Mario Bros. 3, which I'm guessing most of you have, everything from the world designs to the graphics, the way they look, the music, the gameplay itself, the power-ups you can get, the variety of enemies, the bosses are great. It's just a very well done game. And obviously it's not a flaw in the system where people say it's one of the best games of all time. Now, I did mention Super Mario Bros. 3 gave me nightmares. Well, I'll tell you a quick story. Back when I was a younger kid, probably 6, 7 years old, I would play the game constantly. Well, at that young age, I would play all the way up till I had to go to bed, which is usually 9, 10 o'clock at night, so I could go to school the next day. There was a time for about a month and a half, and I don't know why to this day I was having these nightmares, but every time I got to World 8, I would be playing the game, then I'd have to shut it off and go to bed. I'd go to sleep, and then I would dream about World 8, and Bowser coming to get me, or falling into the lava, and I'd wake up in fear. As far as I'm concerned, Super Mario Bros. 3 is by far the best game on the NES. And I know that sounds cliche, but if you played the game, if you've spent many hours like I did, and if you spent a lot of your childhood playing the game, you can see why.
Hey guys, D-Pad Danny here. You know, one of my favorite games on the Nintendo Entertainment System is Panic Restaurant. Though you're not likely to see this on very many top 10 lists at all. And it's likely due to the high price. Why's it gotta be so expensive? Those who've played it, though, will tell you that the best word to summarize this game is charming. This game is absolutely oozing with charm. You play as Cookie, a chef who's had his restaurant taken over by the evil O-Dove. I don't have the manual, but Nintendo Power says that he was Cookie's former assistant and he holds a grudge. That's about all there is to the story, and that's all there needs to be. Here you have a fun little 2D romp killing all these food-themed enemies. You've got chickens, carrots, eggs, flan, onions, and loads more. The bosses fit this theme as well. Everything has a cartoony look overall. I dig the aesthetic though. Real colorful and visual appealing in my opinion. I don't know, some people don't like it, but I dig it. I've heard people complain that the music is bad, but I disagree. I find the tunes rather catchy. This game is short. and it's not super hard. I think the first time I played it, I beat it in about 45 minutes. But yeah, back to the charm. And I'm gonna gush a bit here, but here goes. I love how the spikes are dinner knives. This is such a cool touch. Oh man, the way Cookie's mustache bounces up and down when he walks and the expression on his face when he jumps and ducks is great. Ah! But that's a humorous damage sprite, so I'm not even mad. Take the egg. Catch the fish. Even though I feel these verbs should be reversed since you actually take the fish and catch the eggs, they're fun little minigames. Each level is named after a course of a meal that takes the form of different locales at the restaurant, like the kitchen, patio, even walk-in freezer. The fork is an awful weapon, but I love the angry eyebrows Cookie gets when he's on it. You know he's not messing around. Bubbles, falling and flying fish, eggs and sausage, pot-lid elevators, hipster chickens, flying saucers, restaurant vermin. There's so much to love here. I've beaten this game quite a few times, and I've even tried my hand at speedrunning it. Not very well. You know, I sometimes wonder if I forced myself to enjoy this game more than I normally would due to how expensive it is, but I feel like I'd still love it just the same if it was a $10 common. If you have the means to play it, do it.
Kickmaster is an NES game that is appropriate for me to review here, as not only do I love killing time by playing it, but I only found out about the game through Brazel himself. Both beat-em-ups and fantasy games are a dime a dozen on the NES. I can't think of very many games that combine the two. However, while other fantasy games have you using swords, magic, and anything else they ripped off from J.R.R. Tolkien, Kickmaster is different. Sure, there's magic, but for the most part, you are just kicking the crap out of everything until it stops moving. The story is that your brother is a legendary knight everyone expects to save the day from generic fantasy antagonist number 983, but instead at the beginning of the game, he catches a bad case of death. So to save the land and avenge your brother, you start literally kicking ass across multiple levels. Each level has a boss that you must kick to death, lending the game a classic Castlevania feel. Once you shove your foot up their anal cavity, you gain a new magic spell to go with your 3 kicks. Why a magical martial arts master only knows 3 kicks I can't fathom, but apparently that's all he needs. The game is moderately difficult, but it has 3 difficulty levels. The problem I have with the game is you have to beat all 3 levels to get the real ending. It's honestly the only problem I have with the game, and that's partially because I hate artificially lengthening games. Otherwise, the game is a great time featuring a fun take on dark fantasy, great graphics, and good music. The only other quibble I have is that the cartridge itself is getting expensive, so you may want to look into emulation first. No matter how you play it, I can't recommend this fun blend of Castlevania, Baxanadu, and Chuck Norris enough.
Unfortunately, I still haven't made my decision. These games are both really good, but Double Dragon and Ninja Gaiden just don't have a lot of personal history for me, so I guess we'll just have to look at the last 3. And while I'm doing that, let's check in with our friends.
Hi, I'm Pam from Cannot Be Tamed, and my favorite NES game is Felix the Cat. Felix the Cat was developed by Hudson Soft and released in 1992. Based on the cartoon cat who's been around since 1919, you play as the titular feline and are out to rescue your kidnapped girlfriend Kitty. Mechanically, Felix is a side-scrolling platformer. There are 9 levels that are all quite unique, taking you from rolling green hills to underwater zones, tropical areas, the skies, and even space. Throughout the game, Felix can take on many forms. When he's on land, he uses his magic bag of tricks or can ride around in a car or a tank. On water, he travels in a rubber dinghy or on the back of a dolphin. Collecting milk bottles will allow you to progress to more and more powerful forms. I have such great memories of playing Felix as a kid. It was one of those games that I'd rent over and over from Blockbuster. My mom would always try to convince me to try something new, but more often than not, I would come away with Felix. Since it came out in '92, which is after the Super Nintendo released, Felix wasn't exactly a smashing success. But its late release meant that Hudson Soft knew how to work the NES hardware, and as a result, I think it's one of the prettier games on the system. The color palette is impressive, and the sprites, animations, and environments all look really good. It also has a very catchy soundtrack. Felix is really just a joy to play. It looks great, it sounds great, it's fun, it's not too challenging and therefore not overly frustrating. It's just something I can sit down, play, and beat in less than an hour. And who doesn't want to be a magical cat?
Hey everybody, Dan Greenberg from Winterion Game Studios here. Favorite games are always an interesting topic to dive into because unlike so many other ways we judge them, they're highly subjective in nature. A lot of our personal feelings, historical background, or anecdotal evidence related to games comes into our decision making when we pick our personal favorites. So, submitted for your consideration, Championship Bowling for the NES. Championship Bowling is simply that in its truest incarnation, a bowling game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It allows up to 4 players to compete with unique bowlers, bowling balls on a number of different lanes. There are some fantastical celebrations for bowling particularly well, but there's nothing to be said about this title beyond the fact that it is a fairly effective bowling game, and the only one for the system. You do have to be a bit precise with your controls when trying to select the amount of power or the specific amount of hook, and the physics are good but hardly perfect. But for the system and its time, it was as close to the experience as you were going to get on a home console. Perhaps more importantly, this was a game I was able to share with family, whereas most titles only interested 1 or maybe 2 members of my family. There were a number of us that played Championship Bowling over the years, including my brother, my father, my uncles, and my grandparents. It was a game unlike most that we all knew the rules to going in, nobody was terribly confused by any of the inputs, and because of that simplicity, it made for a really fun experience around the family television. In this way, it's not unlike the Wii many years later. It democratized the living room. Everybody was on a relatively even playing ground. It can be difficult to find a game that everyone can sit down, understand, and play together. And for our family, Championship Bowling was just that. So is Championship Bowling the best game on the NES? Far from it. There are a number of better titles. But as far as favorites go, for myself it's pretty high up there, and I know the memories that my family and I have playing it will last a lifetime.
Alright, let's talk about G.I. Joe for the NES. Released in 1991, G.I. Joe for the NES was published by Taxon and developed by Kid. A wide range of video games have been released from these two companies, ranging from Low G Man to Pepsi Man. But G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, may not just be one of the best games released by either company, but one of my favorite Nintendo games of all time. The story finds you controlling a set of Joes who are out on their biggest mission yet. You see, somewhere between trying to melt the polar ice caps and steal all of the world's electricity, everyone at G.I. Joe has just gotten fed up with Cobra's bullshit. The plan is simple. Infiltrate each of Cobra's bases, plant a few bombs, fight your way out, and then blow it the f*** up. Yo, Joe! Seriously, there's not even like a stay in school or a don't do drugs message attached to this thing. It's just invade Cobra property and kill everyone inside. It's amazing. Each mission will have you selecting from 3 different Joes while fighting through 3 different areas per level. You'll get to pick between Duke, Snake Eyes, Rock and Roll, Blizzard, and not Sergeant Slaughter. And eventually General Hawk himself. Each character has their own attributes ranging from jump to weapon type, making each character feel just different enough for each pairing to feel unique. Along the way, you'll also be able to upgrade your health bar and your weapon. You'll probably also find yourself playing a lot of pause and switch as you're trying to get everybody upgraded as quickly as possible. You also get access to classic G.I. Joe vehicles such as the Battlecopter and the Buzzbore. The bosses will even talk shit to you via cutscenes between each part of the stage, which does an excellent job of building up the tension for each boss fight. On top of that, the game had a great soundtrack composed by Nobuyuki Shioda and Yusuke Takahama, the later of which having worked on titles such as Bad Dudes for the NES and Bloody Wolf on the TurboGrafx 16. The game does feature permadeath for each character, but they do have a password system that's not too painful to use. At least not compared to the sadistic exercise that its sequel, The Atlantis Factor, had for a password system, but that also only started you off with 1 character and a branching map. But if you want a more pure and direct action platform experience, the original G.I. Joe on the NES is definitely the one to play. It's an incredibly fun game with lots of challenging action and fan service, and it is without a doubt one of my favorite Nintendo games of all time.
Hey folks, Lumpz the Clown here, and at the behest of my good buddy Brazzle the Gamer, I'd like to talk about why I love Sweet Home just a teensy bit more than other heavy hitters that sit in my collection, and when I first played it. Released exclusively in Japan way back in 1989 and developed by Capcom, Sweet Home is the 8-bit RPG grandfather of the Resident Evil series, in that you attempt to lead a group of survivors out of a haunted mansion. And much like Resident Evil, many parts of the mansion are cut off until you find a specific item or complete a certain objective. What I enjoy most about Sweet Home is that even for an 8-bit title, it still manages to project an overall sense of dread as you traverse the mansion. At any moment, your characters can be swept away to an unknown location by a vengeful spirit, a fallen floorboard can leave an unwitting teammate fighting for their life atop a bottomless pit, and in perhaps my favorite feature of all, a critical blow or surprise one-hitter can leave any party member permanently dead. It wasn't until 2000 when Gaijin translated the original game that it ever hit North America, but that doesn't mean that I rank it any less than other stellar titles from my childhood, such as Metal Gear and Ghosts and Goblins. Rather, Sweet Home's late entry into the annals of clowny history circa 2014 have proven to me that true love can enter our lives at any time, and it's always way more beautiful than we ever could have imagined. Thanks for watching, and Lumpz the Clown out.
Well, I've made my decision. Super Mario Brothers is not the one I'm going to pick. It's a great game, I have a lot of good memories with it, but the gameplay doesn't really hold up to the other two. Mega Man 2. Oh, I wanted to pick this, but I mean, it even shows up on my top 30 games list that I posted on my website quite a while back. But when I really get down to it, my favorite is The Legend of Zelda. And the reason is, I've spent so much time with this game, and I love this game so much. And I've played it with my parents. I remember that my dad came home one night with another copy of this because of the first copy we had. It quit saving games and the save battery ran out. So, Legend of Zelda is my favorite. I want to thank all of my contributors. They did a great job, and I just really couldn't have done this without them. And thank you for watching this far. So, that's all I've got. Later.